At my sister's wedding, the bride put me at the back table with her coworkers plus ones and distant cousins nobody recognized, while her new best friends sat at the family table where I belonged. I stood up, walked to the gift table, tore up the $5 Arizona check I'd written, stuffed the pieces in my clutch, and left through the side exit before the ceremony even started. What Jessica didn't know was that I'd also sent a few emails that morning to some very important people, and by the time she realized what I'd done, her perfect day was already falling apart. The humiliation wasn't even subtle. When I arrived at the Four Seasons ballroom that morning, I found my name card at table 17, positioned against the back wall next to the kitchen doors. The clinking of dishes and shouted orders from the catering staff competed with the string quartet. Meanwhile, Jessica had seated her sorority sisters from college, women she hadn't spoken to in 5 years until they saw her engagement announcement, at table 2, right next to our parents. I stood there holding my name card, my emerald bridesmaid dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a role I'd never agreed to play. Taylor, my best friend who'd driven 3 hours to attend, found me staring at the seating chart. Table 17? Are you kidding me? She pointed at the chart. She put Ryan's fantasy football league at table 6. People he sees twice a year are closer to the family than you are. The memory of the past 6 months crashed over me. Every Saturday I'd spent helping Jessica address invitations because she was too stressed. The $2,000 I'd loaned her for the dress alterations because she'd miscalculated the budget. The countless hours I'd devoted to calling vendors, negotiating prices, and solving last-minute crises because she'd asked me to be her right hand in planning. I paid for half the flowers in this room, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. I spent my vacation days helping her plan this wedding, and she put me at the table for people she barely knows. Taylor pulled out her phone. We're leaving. This is insane. But I wasn't ready to leave yet. I needed to understand. I needed to hear Jessica say it to my face. I found her in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids, none of whom were me, despite being her only sister. She was laughing at something one of them said, her hand gesturing animatedly, the massive diamond on her finger catching the light. Jessica, can I talk to you for a second? The laughter died. Her eyes flicked to me, then away, a flash of guilt crossing her features before being replaced by defensive irritation. Audrey, I'm kind of busy right now. We're taking photos in 20 minutes. This will only take a minute. It's about the seating arrangement. One of the bridesmaids, Stephanie, who'd stolen Jessica's boyfriend in college before they eventually made up, smirked. Oh, you saw that? Yeah, it was a tough call with limited space at the family tables. Limited space at the family tables for her sister. Limited space, I repeated slowly. You found space for your yoga instructor and Ryan's coworkers from his old job, but not for your sister. Jessica's jaw tightened. She stood, smoothing down her dress with deliberate care. Can we not do this right now? This is my wedding day. Then when should we do this? After I've spent the entire reception watching strangers sit where I should be? You're being dramatic. Jessica's voice had that dismissive tone she'd perfected over the years, the one that made me feel like a child throwing a tantrum. The seating arrangement is final. I spent weeks on it. Weeks you apparently didn't think to mention that your own sister wasn't a priority. Stephanie stood, positioning herself next to Jessica like a bodyguard. Maybe if you'd been more supportive during the planning instead of questioning every decision, you'd have earned a better seat. The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. I'd been more involved in planning this wedding than anyone except Jessica herself. I'd taken time off work to meet with florists when Jessica was too busy. I'd spent my weekends tracking down specific vintage decorations because she'd seen them on Pinterest. I'd loaned her money 3 separate times because she kept forgetting to budget for things. More supportive? I looked directly at Jessica. I've done nothing but support you. I've been there for every crisis, every breakdown, every last-minute emergency. What exactly did I do to deserve being treated like a stranger? Jessica's expression shifted, something cold settling into her features. You want the truth? Fine. You've been hovering and controlling this entire time. Every suggestion I made, you had to put in your 2 cents. Every vendor I picked, you had to question. This is my wedding, Audrey. Mine and Ryan's. Not yours. The words hit like physical blows. I'd questioned vendors because she'd nearly been scammed twice by companies with fake websites. I'd offered suggestions because she'd specifically asked for my opinion. But apparently, helping had been reinterpreted as controlling. I was trying to help you, I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. Well, I didn't ask for that kind of help. I asked you to be supportive, not to take over. Jessica crossed her arms. And honestly, I'm closer to these women now. They've been there for me without judgment, without making me feel like I can't make my own decisions. The betrayal was stunning in its completeness. These women she was closer to had been in her life for less than a year. Most of them she'd met through Ryan's social circle. But I'd been there for 31 years, through her bad breakups, her job losses, her financial disasters. So that's it? Years of sisterhood means nothing because I tried to save you from making expensive mistakes? God, listen to yourself. Jessica threw up her hands. This right here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You always think you know better. You always have to be the one in control. Well, guess what? I'm getting married today, and for once I get to make the decisions, including who sits where. The other bridesmaids were watching with barely concealed glee. This drama better than any reality TV show. I could see them already composing the group chat messages they'd send later, dissecting every word. I took a deep breath, forcing down the tears that threatened to fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. You know what? You're right. This is your day. Your decisions. I hope you enjoy it. I turned and walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor with each measured step. Taylor was waiting in the hallway, her expression furious. I heard some of that through the door. Please tell me we're leaving. Not yet, I said, pulling out my phone. I need to make a withdrawal first. The gift table was positioned near the entrance, already overflowing with wrapped boxes and envelopes. I spotted the large cream envelope with my carefully written card inside, the one I'd agonized over, trying to find the perfect words to express my joy for my sister's new beginning. Inside that envelope was a check for $5,000. I'd saved for 6 months to afford that amount, cutting back on dinners out, canceling my gym membership, skipping my annual vacation. I'd wanted to give Jessica and Ryan a real start, to help them with the down payment on the house they'd been dreaming about. But that was when I'd thought I mattered to her. When I'd believed that blood meant something, that sisterhood was worth sacrificing for. I picked up the envelope, opened it, and removed the check. Then, with deliberate precision, I tore it in half. Then quarters, then eighths. The sound of ripping paper was remarkably satisfying. Taylor watched with wide eyes as I continued tearing until the check was confetti-sized pieces. I dumped them all back into the envelope and placed it back on the table, positioned prominently where Jessica would definitely see it later. Feel better? Taylor asked. Not yet, I said, pulling up my email app. But I will. 3 weeks ago, after another fight where Jessica had accused me of being jealous of her happiness, I'd made a decision. I'd hired a private investigator, not for anything sinister, just to understand where my sister's head really was, what she'd been saying about me to others. What I'd discovered had been illuminating. Screenshots of group chats where Jessica called me the control freak and the sister who never got over me being prettier. Photos of her at bars with Ryan's friends, complaining about how I'd forced my help on her. Evidence of her telling people I'd been sabotaging her wedding out of jealousy because I was still single. But most valuable of all, I had a complete list of every vendor for this wedding. Because I'd been the one to contact most of them, to negotiate prices, to coordinate schedules. I had email chains, contracts with my name on them as an emergency contact, and vendor relationships I'd personally built. I opened my email and began typing. The first message went to the florist. Hi Marie, this is Audrey Mitchell. I need to inform you that I'm withdrawing my guarantee on the Mitchell-Clark wedding account. Any outstanding balance should be collected directly from the couple. Thank you for your understanding. The second went to the photographer. Hello, David. I'm writing to let you know I won't be covering the remainder of the photography package as previously discussed. Please coordinate payment directly with the bride and groom. I continued down the list. The videographer, the cake designer, the lighting company, the ceremony musician. I didn't cancel anything. That would have been too obvious, too cruel. I simply removed myself as the financial backup. Every vendor I'd spoken to, every person who'd been told Audrey Mitchell will handle any issues, now knew I was stepping away. Within an hour, those vendors would start calling Jessica and Ryan, asking for updated payment information. By this afternoon, they'd be demanding immediate payment for balances due. And Jessica had no idea that half the vendors had only agreed to deferred payment because I'd personally guaranteed the amounts. Are you sure about this? Taylor asked, reading over my shoulder. I hit send on the last email and looked up at her. My sister just told me I'm not family enough to sit at the family table. She told me years of sisterhood mean nothing because I tried to help her. So yes, I'm sure. We walked out of the Four Seasons into the bright June sunlight. Behind us, I could hear the string quartet beginning the processional music. In about 10 minutes, Jessica would walk down the aisle. In about an hour, she'd go looking for that envelope with my check and find confetti instead. And by tonight, when the vendors started calling, she'd realize exactly how much her controlling sister had actually been protecting her. Taylor linked her arm through mine as we headed toward her car. "What now?" "Now," I said, feeling the first genuine smile of the day cross my face. "We go get brunch. Somewhere expensive. I suddenly have an extra $5 in my budget." My phone buzzed before we reached the parking lot. A text from my mother. "Where are you? Ceremony is about to start." I turned off my phone without responding. They'd figure it out soon enough. My phone stayed off for exactly 4 hours before I turned it back on. Taylor and I were finishing our second bottle of champagne at a rooftop restaurant downtown when the messages started flooding in. 17 missed calls from my mother, 9 from my father, 3 from Jessica's new number. She'd blocked me on her old one months ago during another argument. And text messages. So many text messages. "Mom, Audrey Elizabeth Mitchell, where are you?" "Mom, your sister is devastated. The ceremony had to be delayed." "Mom, this is unacceptable behavior. Call me immediately." "Dad, we need to talk about what happened today." Jessica's number. "You're a spiteful bitch and everyone knows it now." Jessica again. "I hope you're proud of yourself for ruining my wedding." And then, 3 hours later, a different tone entirely. "Mom, Audrey, we need you to call us back. There's been some confusion with the vendors." That message made me smile into my champagne glass. Taylor leaned over to read the screen. Confusion with the vendors. That's one way to put it. My phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, waited 30 seconds, then listened to the message on speaker. "Audrey, I don't know what you've done, but the florist just pulled half the arrangements. The photographer is refusing to shoot the reception without immediate payment. Your father is trying to handle it, but..." Her voice cracked slightly. "We need you to explain what's happening. Please call back." "Are you going to call?" Taylor asked. "Eventually." I topped off both our glasses. "But not yet. Let them figure it out themselves for a while." What they were figuring out was the house of cards I'd been holding up for 6 months. Every time Jessica had said, "I'll pay you back next week," I'd known she wouldn't. Every time she'd promised a vendor, "My sister is handling the deposit," I'd been the one to actually pay it. I'd covered $200 for the ceremony musicians because Jessica had forgotten the down payment was due. I'd paid $800 to hold the florist's date because Jessica spent that money on her bachelorette party in Nashville instead. The photographer had a $2,000 balance due that I'd promised to cover after the wedding because Jessica had insisted she needed that money for the honeymoon. I'd been her safety net, her backup plan, her solution to every financial disaster she'd created. And she'd repaid me by treating me like an unwanted guest at her wedding. Now the net was gone. My phone rang again. This time it was my father. I considered ignoring it, but something made me answer. "Dad." "Audrey." His voice was tight with stress. "Where are you? Your mother is beside herself." "I'm having lunch. Jessica asked me not to hover, so I'm giving her space." "Don't play games. You know exactly what's happening here. The vendors are all saying you told them to demand immediate payment. The florist removed half the centerpieces because we couldn't produce a credit card on the spot. The photographer is threatening to leave if we don't pay his balance in the next hour." "That sounds stressful," I said calmly. "Have you tried calling Jessica and Ryan? It's their wedding after all." "Their decisions." Silence. Then, "What did your sister say to you? You really want to know? Or would you prefer I stay quiet and keep playing ATM for everyone?" "Audrey?" "She told me I'm controlling, that I ruined her planning experience by trying to help, that she's closer to women she's known for 6 months than she is to her own sister." My voice remained steady. Years of corporate meetings teaching me how to deliver devastating information without emotion. And then she sat me at table 17 with strangers while her yoga instructor got a family table seat. So I removed myself from the situation exactly like she wanted, by sabotaging her wedding? By stopping financial support I was never obligated to provide in the first place. I took a sip of champagne. "Every vendor calling you right now? I guaranteed their payments personally because Jessica couldn't afford this wedding. She wanted a $75,000 Four Seasons event on a $32,000 annual salary. The math doesn't work, Dad. It never did. I was just too stupid to let her fail." Another long silence. How much did you cover? Does it matter? She made it clear I'm not really family, so I'm no longer acting like I am. Your mother is crying. Jessica is locked in the bathroom. This is a disaster. Then maybe Jessica should have thought about that before publicly humiliating the person funding half her dream wedding. I ended the call before he could respond. Taylor was watching me with something like awe. That was ice cold. That was overdue. But my hands were shaking slightly. No matter how justified I felt, these were still my parents. Still my sister. The doubt lasted approximately 2 minutes until another text came through. This one from Stephanie, one of Jessica's bridesmaids. You're a jealous cow who couldn't stand seeing Jessica happy. Everyone here knows what you are. I showed it to Taylor, who grabbed my phone and typed a response before I could stop her. Tell Jessica that jealousy is a poor excuse for her financial irresponsibility. The vendors I personally paid deserve their money. She can figure out how to cover what she owes. The response came back within seconds. She's refunding your gift. She doesn't want your money. Taylor typed back. Check the envelope. Already took it back. Unlike your bride, I believe in withdrawing support clearly and directly. No response to that. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Marie, the florist, had responded to my earlier message. Thank you for the update, Audrey. I've adjusted the account accordingly. For what it's worth, you were always the professional one to work with. I'm sorry things ended this way. Professional. That word stuck with me. I treated Jessica's wedding like a project, managing vendors and timelines with the same efficiency I used at work. But I'd done it out of love. Out of a desire to give my sister the perfect day she'd always dreamed about. She'd mistaken competence for control. My father called back. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother. Then Jessica herself. 3 times in rapid succession. The messages piled up. Dad. We're handling the vendor situation, but you need to come back and talk to your sister. Mom. How could you do this to family? Jessica. You've always been jealous of me. Jessica. Everyone here sees you for what you are now. Jessica. I'm never forgiving this. That last message should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt something like relief. If Jessica was never forgiving this, then I was free. Free from being her backup bank account. Free from being blamed for trying to help. Free from spending my energy on someone who saw me as an obstacle rather than an ally. Want to know what's really messed up? I asked Taylor, scrolling through the messages. Not once has she apologized for the seating arrangement. Not once has anyone acknowledged that maybe, possibly, I had a reason to be hurt. Because in their minds, family means you're supposed to take whatever they dish out and smile about it, Taylor said. Your sister gets to treat you like garbage, and you're supposed to keep paying for the privilege. A new email arrived from David, the photographer. Audrey, the bride's father just paid the balance in full. I'll be staying for the reception. I wanted you to know I appreciate the professionalism you showed throughout this process. The industry could use more clients like you, so my father had covered it. Probably several $1,000s on the spot. Money he and Mom had been saving for their anniversary trip to Italy. Money that should have been Jessica's responsibility. But I was the villain for not continuing to enable her. 3 hours after the ceremony was supposed to start, my mother sent a photo. Jessica and Ryan at the altar, finally married. My sister looked radiant in her dress, smiling at her new husband. No sign of the chaos that had erupted backstage. No sign that I had ever existed. I wasn't in the background of the photo. Wasn't standing with the family, because I'd been at table 17, where I wouldn't have been visible from the altar anyway. She got her perfect photo, I said softly. Taylor squeezed my hand. And you got your freedom. My phone rang again. This time an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Audrey Mitchell, a woman's voice, professional and slightly apologetic. Speaking. This is Jennifer from Elite Catering. I'm calling about the Mitchell-Clark wedding reception. We've received your email withdrawing your guarantee, but we have a significant balance due, $400 for the upgraded menu selections and the additional bar package. The mother of the bride just informed us that we should bill you directly for these amounts as they were your suggestions. My grip tightened on the phone. Let me be very clear, Jennifer. I'm not paying for anything related to this wedding. Any charges should be directed to the bride and groom. If they told you I made suggestions, that doesn't make me financially responsible. I understand, but we have emails from you coordinating the menu details, and coordinating at the bride's request is not the same as agreeing to pay. Send your invoices to Jessica and Ryan Clark. If they don't pay, that's between you and them. I ended the call, my heart pounding. They were trying to stick me with even more bills now, trying to leverage my helpfulness into financial obligation. What was that? Taylor asked. The caterer. trying to make me pay for upgraded options Jessica chose. I pulled up my email and started drafting a message to every vendor I'd worked with. I need to get ahead of this before they try to bill me for the entire wedding. The email was short and clear. This message confirms that I have no financial responsibility for the Mitchell-Clark wedding beyond amounts I have already personally paid in advance. Any unpaid balances should be collected directly from Jessica Clark and Ryan Clark. Please do not submit any invoices to me. I sent it to the photographer, videographer, DJ, lighting company, cake designer, transportation service, and venue coordinator. Within 20 minutes, I received 3 responses, all professional, all understanding, and all confirming they'd already been contacted by my mother, trying to get them to bill me for outstanding amounts. My own mother was trying to make me pay for a wedding where I'd been treated like an afterthought. The sun was setting over Chicago when my father called again. This time I answered, "Audrey, we need to discuss this situation like adults." "I agree. Let's start with why Mom is telling vendors to bill me for services I never agreed to pay for." Silence. She's emotional. She's not thinking clearly. She's thinking clearly enough to try to dump thousands of dollars in bills on me. So let me be equally clear. I'm not paying for anything else. Not the caterer, not the cake, not the DJ, nothing. Jessica wanted this wedding. She can figure out how to pay for it. She can't afford it, you know that. Then she should have planned a wedding she could afford instead of expecting me to fund her fantasy. My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Do you have any idea how much money I've spent on this wedding? How many hours I've devoted to making sure everything was perfect? And my reward was being told I'm controlling and getting seated with strangers. Your sister is young. She made a mistake. She's 31 years old. That's not young. That's old enough to understand that actions have consequences. So you're punishing her? No, Dad. I'm simply not rewarding her. There's a difference. He sighed heavily. The reception is starting in an hour. Your absence is noticeable. People are asking questions. Tell them I had a prior commitment. Tell them I'm sick. Tell them whatever you want. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. Your mother wants you here. My mother wants me to keep funding Jessica's choices and accepting poor treatment. Those aren't the same thing as wanting me here. I watched the sun sink lower, painting the sky orange and pink. I love you, Dad. But I'm not coming back tonight. Maybe not ever, depending on how this plays out. You don't mean that, but I did. For the first time in my life, I meant it completely. The call stopped around midnight. By then, Jessica's reception was over. The last dance danced, the bouquet thrown to squealing bridesmaids. My phone held 43 unread messages, but I'd stopped checking them hours ago. Taylor's guest room was quiet and dark, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my sister's face telling me she was closer to strangers than to me. Heard her voice saying I was controlling when I'd only been trying to help. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. The private investigator's report was saved in a password-protected folder. 3 weeks of surveillance that had cost me $2,800, but told me everything I needed to know about who my sister really was. The screenshots of group chats were the worst. Not because they were shocking, but because they were so casual in their cruelty. Jessica to her college friends, "Audrey's been up my ass about every detail. She thinks because she has a real job, she knows better than me about my wedding." Jessica to Ryan's sister, "I swear she's trying to sabotage things so she can feel superior. Classic older sister jealousy." Jessica to Stephanie, "She keeps pushing these budget-friendly options like she's my financial advisor. I wanted a Four Seasons wedding and I'm getting one whether she approves or not." But the most damning evidence wasn't about me at all. It was about money. The PI had discovered that Jessica had been telling people I'd offered to pay for the wedding, not help with costs, pay for the entire thing. She'd shown friends fake text messages, doctored screenshots where my "let me help with the deposit" became "I'll cover all the wedding expenses." She'd been running a long con, positioning herself as the generous sister with the successful sibling bankrolling her dream day. And when I'd started questioning expenses and suggesting cheaper alternatives, I'd become the villain who was going back on my promise, a promise I'd never made. I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been secretly maintaining. Every dollar I'd loaned Jessica over the past 5 years, categorized and dated. $500, emergency car repair, March 2020, $800, surprise medical bill, July 2020, Windsor, $200, first month's rent when I lost my job, October 2020, $2, $100, would pay you back from my tax return, April 2021, $650, phone got shut off, August 2021, $100, $500. Credit card minimum or they'll sue me. December 2021. The list continued for pages. Total amount loaned, $31, $400. Total amount repaid, $0. Every loan had come with promises of repayment next month, or after my bonus, or when things settle down. And I'd believed her every single time because she was my sister. I pulled up my banking records and started documenting everything with screenshots, every Venmo transfer marked loan, every check with will pay back in the memo line, every text message where she'd promised repayment. The wedding expenses were separate. Another spreadsheet, more organized because I'd started tracking when the requests became frequent. $1, $200. Ceremony musicians deposit $800. Florist date hold $2, $1,000. Photography balance, promise to pay after wedding, $600. Dress alterations, $1, $500. Engagement party I'd hosted $3, $400. Catering upgrades they were now trying to bill me for. The wedding total came to $9, $500 in direct payments, plus the $5 $0 gift check I'd torn up. My sister owed me over $40 $0, and she'd repaid me by seating me with strangers and calling me controlling. At 3 a.m., I started drafting an email. Not to Jessica, she wouldn't listen. Not to my parents. They'd chosen their side. This email was going to someone who might actually care about the truth. Marie, the florist, had mentioned she was part of a wedding vendor networking group. David, the photographer, was active on social media exposing problem clients. These vendors talked to each other, warned each other about people who didn't pay bills or caused problems. My sister wanted to burn me publicly. I could do the same, armed with nothing but facts. The email laid out the timeline professionally. The loans never repaid, the wedding expenses I'd covered, the promises that had been broken. I attached screenshots of Jessica's group chats, calling me jealous and controlling, included documentation of every payment I'd made to vendors. I sent it to Marie and David with a simple note. You both mentioned the vendor community shares information about difficult clients. I thought you should have the complete picture about the Mitchell-Clark wedding, in case Jessica or Ryan contact you for future services. My involvement has ended, but their financial instability and tendency to blame others for their choices has not. The sent message sat in my outbox glowing in the darkness. Professional, factual, devastating, and perfectly legal. Everything I'd shared was documented truth. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. Marie's response came through at 3:47 a.m. Audrey, I'm sorry you went through this. I've already shared your situation with our vendor network. The wedding industry is small, and reputation matters. Thank you for the documentation. It will help others avoid similar situations. By sunrise, I'd received 4 more responses from vendors I'd worked with, all sympathetic, all confirming they'd shared the information through their professional networks. Jessica had wanted a 4 Seasons wedding to impress her friends and social media followers. She'd wanted the prestige, the photos, the story of the perfect day. What she'd get instead was a reputation in the Chicago wedding industry as someone who didn't pay bills and blamed others for her financial problems. Taylor knocked softly on the guest room door at 7 a.m. carrying coffee. You're awake early, never went to sleep. I showed her my laptop screen. The sent emails, the vendor responses, the documentation I'd compiled. She read through everything slowly, her expression shifting from surprise to grim satisfaction. You're building a case. I'm protecting myself. Mom tried to make vendors bill me yesterday. What happens next month when Jessica needs money and decides I owe her because I ruined her wedding? I need proof of what really happened. Smart. Taylor sat on the edge of the bed. But this is going to make things worse with your family. You know that, right? Things can't get worse. They either acknowledge I was treated unfairly or they don't. If they don't, then I don't have a family worth protecting anyway. My phone rang. My mother calling before 8 a.m. on a Sunday. I put it on speaker. Audrey, we need to talk about your behavior yesterday. Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't be flippant. Your sister spent last night in tears because of what you did. The vendors you contacted caused chaos during her reception. The florist removed centerpieces during dinner. The photographer almost left. You deliberately sabotaged her wedding out of spite. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. Mom, I withdrew financial support from vendors I had personally guaranteed. That's not sabotage. That's ending my involvement in a wedding where I was told I wasn't wanted. You were wanted, your family. Family who got seated at table 17 while Jessica's yoga instructor sat at table 2? Family who was told she's too controlling for trying to help? That kind of wanted? Your sister was stressed. She didn't mean those things. She meant them enough to say them in front of her bridesmaids. She meant them enough to act on them. My voice stayed level, professional. Let me ask you something, Mom. How much of that wedding did you think I paid for? Silence. I'm guessing Jessica told you she had everything covered, that her savings and Ryan's contribution would handle it. Am I right? She said you'd offered to help with some things. I loaned her $400 over the past 5 years. None of it repaid. I paid another $500 in direct wedding expenses. I wrote a $500 gift check. That's $900 total, Mom. Almost a year of my salary after taxes. I could hear her breathing on the other end, quick and shallow. So when you say I sabotaged her wedding, what you mean is I stopped funding it. There's a difference. She never told us. Because she's been lying to everyone, lying to you about having money, lying to her friends about me offering to pay for everything, lying to vendors about who was financially responsible. I pulled up the screenshots on my laptop. I have documentation, Mom. Every loan, every payment, every promise she made and broke. Would you like me to send it to you? That's not necessary. I think it is, because right now you're calling me to lecture about sabotage while your daughter owes me enough money to buy a car? And instead of apologizing for how I was treated, you're defending her. She's your sister. And I'm your daughter. Don't I deserve consideration too? The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, your father had to pay $600 yesterday to keep vendors from walking out. Money we didn't budget for. Money Jessica promised she had covered. Did she also promise she'd pay you back? She said you'd handle it, that you'd always plan to cover those amounts. There it was, the final confirmation of Jessica's lie. She'd told our parents I'd committed to paying, making me the bad guy when I withdrew support. Mom, I never agreed to cover vendor balances. I guaranteed deposits with the understanding Jessica would pay the remainder. She didn't. That's her failure, not mine. So we're just supposed to let vendors take legal action against her? No, you're supposed to let Jessica face the consequences of her choices. She's a married woman now. She's an adult. Stop protecting her from reality. She's still my daughter. So am I. But apparently that only matters for one of us. I ended the call before she could respond. Taylor handed me the coffee. That was brutal. That was necessary. But my hands were shaking again. No matter how justified I felt, these confrontations were taking their toll. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Your mother is very upset. This family is falling apart. I typed back. This family fell apart when Jessica decided she could treat me poorly without consequences. I'm just the first person to stop pretending everything is fine. His response came quickly. We raised you better than this. You raised me to stand up for myself and not accept poor treatment. I'm doing exactly what you taught me. The problem is you expected me to make an exception for family. No response to that. Over the next 2 hours, I received messages from various family members who'd apparently been briefed on the situation. My Aunt Karen, who'd always favored Jessica, sent a long text about forgiveness and family bonds. My cousin Marcus asked if I was seriously going to destroy your sister's marriage over some money. Some money. $45,000 was some money. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I spent the morning organizing my documentation into a clear chronological narrative. Bank statements, text messages, email chains, vendor contracts, Jessica's group chat screenshots, everything arranged to tell the story of systematic financial manipulation and emotional betrayal. At noon, I received an email that changed everything. The subject line read, Mitchell Clark Wedding Fraud Investigation. My chest tightened as I opened it. Ms. Mitchell, I am Detective Sarah Williams with the Chicago PD Financial Crimes Division. We have received information regarding potential fraud related to the Mitchell Clark wedding at the Four Seasons. A vendor reported concerns that someone may have used your name and identity to commit financial fraud. We would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Please call the number below to schedule a time. I stared at the email, reading it 3 times before the words fully registered. Someone had reported fraud. A vendor thought Jessica might have used my identity illegally. I called the number immediately. Detective Williams met me at a coffee shop in the Loop Monday morning. She was younger than I expected. Mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a direct manner that suggested she didn't waste time. Thank you for meeting on short notice, Ms. Mitchell. She pulled out a tablet and a small recording device. Do you mind if I record this conversation? Not at all. She pressed record and stated the date, time, and participants for the record. Then she looked at me directly. Elite Catering filed a police report yesterday afternoon. They claimed that someone using your name and email address entered into a contract for upgraded catering services totaling $900. However, when they attempted to collect payment, they discovered the credit card authorization on file was fraudulent, an account number that didn't match any card issued in your name. My mouth went dry. I never authorized any credit card. That's what we suspected. The email address used was amitchell82@gmail. Is that your email? No, mine is audrey.mitchell@gmail. She made a note. We pulled the IP address from the account creation. It traces back to a Starbucks in Lincoln Park. Does your sister live in that area? She did until recently. She and Ryan just moved to Wicker Park last month. Detective Williams showed me her tablet screen. This is the catering contract submitted with your forged signature. Can you confirm this isn't your signature? I looked at the electronic signature. A loopy, exaggerated version of my name that looked nothing like my actual signature. That's not mine. My signature is much smaller and I don't loop the Y like that. Good. She swiped to another screen. Elite Catering isn't the only vendor who's come forward. We've now heard from 3 other companies reporting similar concerns. Each one received emails from what appeared to be you, authorizing services and providing payment information that turned out to be invalid. My stomach turned. Jessica was setting me up. That's one possibility we're investigating. She leaned back in her chair. Tell me about your relationship with your sister. Start from the beginning. I spent the next hour walking her through everything. The years of loans, the wedding planning, the escalating requests, the group chats, the seating arrangement. I showed her my documentation. Every spreadsheet, every screenshot, every receipt. Detective Williams took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. Ms. Mitchell, what you've described is a pattern of financial exploitation. Your sister has been systematically borrowing money with no intention of repayment. And when you began setting boundaries, she attempted to forge contracts in your name to force your financial responsibility. Can you prove that? The forensics team is analyzing the fake email account now. If we can prove your sister created it and used it to defraud vendors, we have a case for identity theft and fraud. She paused. I need to ask, do you want to press charges if we find evidence? The question hung in the air between us. Press charges against my own sister. Send her to jail potentially. Or at minimum saddle her with a criminal record. Destroy what was left of our family. Or let it go. Let Jessica get away with trying to frame me for thousands in fraudulent debt. If you have evidence she committed fraud, yes. I want to press charges. Detective Williams nodded as if she'd expected that answer. We'll be in touch as the investigation progresses. In the meantime, I'd recommend you pull your credit report and place fraud alerts with all 3 bureaus. If your sister was willing to forge contracts, she may have attempted to open credit accounts in your name. I left the coffee shop feeling simultaneously vindicated and nauseous. My sister hadn't just treated me poorly at her wedding. She'd actively tried to defraud me, to stick me with bills I'd never agreed to pay. The credit check confirmed my fears. There were 3 hard inquiries on my credit report from the past month. A credit card application, a personal loan application, and a retail store card application. All denied, fortunately, because the addresses didn't match my actual address. Jessica had been trying to steal my identity to fund her wedding. I forwarded all of this to Detective Williams with a brief email. Additional evidence of attempted fraud attached. Her response came within an hour. Thank you. This strengthens our case significantly. We'll be interviewing your sister and her husband tomorrow. That evening, my father called. Audrey, the police contacted Jessica. They're accusing her of fraud. Did you report your own sister to the police? No, Dad. A vendor reported her when they discovered fraudulent contracts filed in my name. I'm cooperating with the investigation because I'm the victim of identity theft. Identity theft? That's ridiculous. Jessica would never. Dad, she forged my signature on contracts. She created a fake email address pretending to be me. She tried to open credit cards in my name. My voice was steady, factual. The police have evidence. This isn't me being vindictive. This is me protecting myself from actual crimes. But she's your sister. Can't you just drop it? The vendor filed the report, not me. And even if I wanted to drop it, which I don't, the state can prosecute fraud independently. This is out of my hands now. Your mother is devastated. Then maybe Mom should have been more concerned about Jessica's behavior before it escalated to criminal fraud. He was quiet for a moment. When did you become so cold? When my sister tried to frame me for $30,000 in fraudulent debt, and my family blamed me for defending myself. I'm not cold, Dad. I'm finally warm enough to stop letting people walk all over me. I ended the call and blocked both my parents' numbers. The decision should have felt harder than it did. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after Jessica's wedding. Detective Williams called to inform me they'd executed a search warrant on Jessica and Ryan's apartment and found extensive evidence of the fraud scheme. We recovered her laptop with the fake email account still logged in, browser history showing research on identity theft, drafts of contracts she was preparing to send to additional vendors using your name. Detective Williams's voice was professionally neutral, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. We also found a notebook with your personal information, social security number, mother's maiden name, date of birth. Everything someone would need to steal your identity. How did she get my social security number? She photographed your tax documents when she was at your apartment helping you move last year. We found the photos on her phone. I remembered that day. Jessica had offered to help me pack when I'd moved to a new condo. I'd thought it was sisterly kindness. It had been reconnaissance. What happens now? She's been arrested and charged with identity theft, fraud, and forgery. Bail is set at $50,000. Her husband is trying to scrape together 10% for a bail bond. Jessica would be in jail until Ryan could come up with $5,000, the same amount I'd torn up in that check. The irony was almost poetic. When's the arraignment? Thursday at 9 a.m. You don't need to be there, but you're welcome to attend as the victim. I marked it in my calendar. My phone started ringing within the hour. Family members who'd been briefed on the arrest, all calling to beg me to drop the charges, to forgive, to remember that Jessica was family. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I received a call from an unexpected source. Ryan's mother, Patricia. Audrey, I need to speak with you about what's happening with Jessica. Mrs. Clark, with all respect, I'm not discussing the legal case with anyone. I'm not calling about that. I'm calling because I've learned some things about my son's marriage that concern me, and I think you deserve to know. That got my attention. What kind of things? Can we meet in person? There are documents I want to show you. We met at the same coffee shop where I'd spoken with Detective Williams. Patricia arrived with a briefcase full of papers, her expression grim. Ryan confessed everything to me last night after Jessica was arrested. She pulled out a stack of printed emails. Your sister has been lying to him too. She told him you'd agreed to pay for most of the wedding. She showed him fake text messages where you allegedly offered to cover expenses. He believed her. I scanned the documents. Text message screenshots that looked like they came from my number, offering to pay for the venue, the catering, the flowers. All fabricated. She catfished her own husband? Essentially, yes. She created an entire false narrative about your generosity to justify the expensive wedding. Patricia's hands trembled slightly. Ryan is devastated. He thought he was marrying into a family that was supportive and kind. Instead, he finds out his wife is a fraudster who manipulated everyone. Is he staying with her? He filed for an annulment this morning. The marriage has been less than 2 weeks. In Illinois, fraud is grounds for annulment. His lawyer says it should be straightforward given the evidence. So Jessica would lose her husband along with everything else. Why are you telling me this? Because Ryan wants to testify against her. He wants to make this right. Patricia met my eyes. And because I wanted you to know that not everyone in this situation thinks you're the villain. What Jessica did to you is unconscionable. After Patricia left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, watching people rush past on their way to normal Tuesday activities. Lives uncomplicated by family betrayal and criminal charges. My phone buzzed with an email from the Illinois Department of Corrections. Inmate mail notification. Jessica had sent me a letter from jail. I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity won. Audrey, I know you hate me right now, but please listen. I never meant for things to go this far. I just wanted one perfect day, one wedding that would make people see me as successful and put together like you. You have everything, the career, the condo, the savings account. I have nothing. This wedding was supposed to be my thing, my one chance to shine. I know I messed up with the credit cards and the fake emails. I panicked when you started pulling away financially. I thought if I could just make vendors think you'd already committed, you'd feel obligated to follow through. I never thought it would turn into this. Ryan's leaving me. Mom and Dad won't talk to me. I'm going to have a criminal record. My life is over, and it's all because I wanted one nice thing. Was that so wrong? Please drop the charges. Please tell the prosecutor you forgive me. I'm your sister. Doesn't that mean anything anymore? I read it twice, looking for any sign of real remorse, any acknowledgement that she'd hurt me, stolen from me, tried to destroy my credit and reputation. There was none. Just self-pity and blame. I forwarded the email to Detective Williams with a note. Additional evidence of the defendant's mindset. She's admitting to creating fake emails and attempting to obligate me to pay vendor bills fraudulently. Then I blocked all inmate mail from the correction system. The arraignment on Thursday was perfunctory. Jessica appeared in an orange jumpsuit, her hair unwashed, makeup gone. She looked small and scared, nothing like the radiant bride from her wedding photos. When the judge read the charges, she started crying. Her public defender entered a not guilty plea, and the judge set a preliminary hearing date for 3 weeks out. Jessica's eyes found me in the gallery. She mouthed please across the courtroom. I looked away. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Apparently, bride arrested for defrauding sister was newsworthy. Ms. Mitchell, will you be seeking restitution? Ms. Mitchell, have you spoken to your sister since her arrest? Ms. Mitchell, do you regret pressing charges? I stopped and faced the cameras, my corporate media training kicking in. I haven't pressed charges. The state of Illinois prosecutes fraud independently. I'm simply cooperating with law enforcement after being the victim of identity theft. My sister made choices that had legal consequences. I hope this serves as a reminder that financial fraud is a crime, regardless of who commits it. Professional, factual, devastating. The clip went viral by evening. Local news picked it up, then regional, then national. Chicago woman arrested for defrauding sister to fund luxury wedding became a trending story. Jessica's perfect wedding photos were plastered across news sites next to her mugshot. Her wedding hashtag, once full of congratulations, filled with comments about karma and justice. The internet was doing what I couldn't, making sure everyone knew exactly who Jessica really was. My mother finally broke her silence with a text that bypassed my block through a friend's phone. I hope you're satisfied. You've destroyed your sister's life over money. I'll never forgive you for this. I didn't respond, but I did send one final email to every family member who'd called me cold, vindictive, jealous, or cruel. The email attached every piece of documentation I'd compiled, every loan never repaid, every forged document, every fake text message, every piece of evidence the police had gathered. The subject line read, "The truth about Jessica's wedding." The body of the email was simple. I'm done defending myself against false accusations. Here's the documented evidence of what actually happened. Believe what you want, but don't contact me again unless it's to apologize. I sent it and closed my laptop. The only person who responded was my father 3 hours later. I'm sorry. We should have listened to you sooner. Your mother and I need time to process all of this. Time to process. Not an apology for their role in enabling Jessica. Not an acknowledgement that they'd chosen sides against me. But it was something. 6 months later, I sat in a conference room at my company's headquarters, presenting a promotion proposal to senior leadership. The career I'd built while my sister was defrauding me had continued to flourish. My focus had returned, undivided by family drama and financial exploitation. I'd been promoted to senior marketing director with a $35,000 salary increase. The first thing I'd done with the raise was book a 2-week vacation to New Zealand, something I'd been putting off for years because Jessica always seemed to need emergency loans. Jessica had pleaded guilty to 1 count of identity theft and 2 counts of fraud as part of a plea deal. She received 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay $47, $350 in restitution. Every dollar she'd taken from me over 5 years, plus the attempted fraudulent charges. The payments were set at $200 per month for the next 20 years. I'd never see most of that money. But that wasn't the point anymore. Her annulled marriage made news in local papers as a cautionary tale about wedding debt and fraud. She'd had to move back in with our parents, unable to afford her own place with a criminal record and no husband. According to my father, who I now spoke to monthly in brief, cordial conversations, Jessica was working 2 part-time jobs and attending court-mandated therapy. She'd lost most of her friends after the fraud conviction. Her social media accounts, once full of wedding content and curated lifestyle photos, were deleted. She'd gotten the one perfect day she'd wanted, and lost everything else in the process. My mother still wasn't speaking to me. I'd stopped waiting for her to come around. Taylor and I were at dinner celebrating my promotion when she asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you ever regret how it all went down? I considered it honestly. I regret that my sister turned out to be someone capable of that level of betrayal. I regret that my family chose enabling her over supporting me. But do I regret stopping it? No, not even a little. People at work were talking about it for weeks after the news coverage. Some of them thought you were harsh. Let them think that. The people who matter know the truth. My phone buzzed with an email notification. A message from Marie, the florist, forwarded through the vendor network. Audrey, thought you'd want to know. Jessica Clark contacted me about doing flowers for an event. I declined and reported the contact to her probation officer as she's not supposed to be entering into contracts without oversight. The vendor community has blacklisted her completely. Thank you for warning us. Justice came in unexpected forms. That weekend, I received a letter via certified mail. Jessica's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single page. Audrey, my lawyer says I shouldn't contact you, but I need you to know something. I'm sorry. Not sorry that I got caught. I mean really sorry for what I did to you. Therapy is making me see how messed up my thinking was, how I justified hurting you because I felt like you had everything and I had nothing. You were right about the wedding. I couldn't afford it. But I was so desperate to prove I wasn't a failure that I destroyed the one relationship that actually mattered. You were the only person who kept showing up for me, and I repaid you with lies and theft. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not the wedding or the marriage. Those were built on lies anyway. I lost my sister, and that's the one thing I can't steal back. I hope someday you can think about me without feeling angry. I hope your life is everything mine isn't. Jessica. I read it once, then put it in my desk drawer with all the other documentation. Maybe someday it would mean something. Today, it was just words. 3 years later, I received a wedding invitation. My father was remarrying. He and my mother had divorced quietly 2 years prior. The strain of Jessica's situation too much for their marriage to bear. His fiancée was a kind woman named Patricia. Yes, Ryan's mother. They'd bonded over their shared experience of watching their children's implosion and had slowly fallen in love. The invitation included a handwritten note. I know I don't deserve your attendance, but it would mean the world to me if you came. You were right about everything. I should have listened sooner. I should have protected you better. I'm trying to do better now. Love, Dad. I RSVP'd yes, +1. Taylor was always up for an event. The wedding was small, elegant, and focused on what mattered. 2 people who'd found each other after life had kicked them around. No extravagant florals, no expensive venue, no social media hashtag. During the reception, my father pulled me aside. Jessica asked if you'd be here. I told her no, that I hadn't invited her. Is she doing okay? She's surviving. Working as a receptionist, living in a small apartment, paying you back monthly. She asks about you sometimes. He paused. She's dating someone new, a man who knows about her record and accepts it. She seems humbler, quieter. That's good. Patricia and I thought about inviting her, but we decided this day should be about moving forward, not looking back. He looked at me directly. I'm proud of you, Audrey, for standing up for yourself when no one else would. For refusing to be anyone's doormat. I should have taught Jessica the same lessons. It's not too late for her to learn them herself. No, he agreed, but she had to lose everything to start. As I watched my father dance with his new wife, I realized something had shifted. The anger that had sustained me through the legal battles and family drama had faded. I didn't hate Jessica anymore. I didn't miss her either. She'd simply become someone I used to know, someone whose choices had removed her from my life. And I was okay with that. My career continued to flourish. I'd been promoted twice more and was now leading the entire marketing division. The money Jessica had taken, which had once felt like such a devastating loss, was barely a blip in my current financial situation. I'd bought a house, traveled to 14 countries, built a life I was proud of. Jessica's monthly $200 payments came like clockwork, automatically deposited into an account I barely checked. After 5 years, she'd paid back $12,000 of the $47, $350. At the current rate, she'd be paying me until she was 53 years old. A 20-year reminder that actions have consequences. On what would have been her 10th wedding anniversary, if the marriage hadn't been annulled after 12 days, I received one final letter from Jessica. Audrey, I'm writing this not because I expect a response, but because my therapist says I need to fully acknowledge the harm I caused. You'll never see this the way I do, but I need you to know. What happened wasn't your fault. Not the investigation, not the arrest, not the conviction, not the ruined wedding or the annulment or the criminal record. You didn't do any of that to me. I did it to myself. I spent years blaming you for having boundaries, for refusing to fund my fantasies, for expecting me to be accountable. But those weren't character flaws. They were strength. I'm not the person I was at that wedding. That person was desperate, entitled, and willing to destroy the people who loved her to maintain an illusion. I hope I'm better now. I'm trying to be. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me a relationship. You don't owe me anything. You already gave me more chances than I deserved. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and I'm sorry. Jessica, I put the letter away with all the others. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday the hurt would fade enough to consider rebuilding something. But today wasn't that day, and I was perfectly fine with that.